Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Nkwane Mashabane, and our Minister of Finance, Minister Gigaba. So thank you very much. You may be seated. Your Excellency, President Jacob Zuma, President of the Republic of South Africa, Mr. KV Kamath, President of the New Development Bank, our Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, Minister Nkwane Mashabane, our Minister of Finance, Minister Malusi Gigaba, other cabinet colleagues present here this morning and deputy ministers, members of the diplomatic corps, ambassadors and high commissioners, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen. It's a particular honor and privilege to serve as program director on this august occasion. The launch of the Africa Regional Center is a significant milestone in the further strengthening of our BRICS partnership, and also an important watershed moment in concretizing BRICS' commitment to supporting Africa's growth agenda. The signing ceremony of the African Regional Center host country agreement and the ribbon cutting are clear evidence of the strong global solidarity which our BRICS partnership enables. The forthcoming BRICS summit, to be hosted in Xiamen by the government of China, will be convened under the theme of promoting a stronger BRICS partnership for a brighter future. Cooperation between the BRICS, including partnerships in a wide variety of political, economic, and social domains, continue to consistently grow and intensify. Critical in all of these will be the role to be played by the New Development Bank as a catalyst for growth and sustainable development. Our country, South Africa, continues to invest and work for the advancement of the Africa agenda, including within the frameworks of the African Union and the Southern African Development Community. We've also worked concertedly with our BRICS partners to ensure that the rich portfolio of resources, capacities, and expertise brought together by BRICS cooperation is deployed in support of the continental African agenda. I'm delighted to say that all our BRICS partner governments fully support this strategic imperative. It's now our duty, as we launch today, to ensure that the exciting potential of the Africa Regional Center is realized through measures to decisively defeat poverty, inequality, and unemployment on our continent. Today is thus, ladies and gentlemen, excellencies, truly an historic occasion. In these troubled times, when global friendship and solidarity in at least some quarters seem to be on the wane, the BRICS partnership is offering an alternative, a more optimistic and a more resolute narrative, a narrative of nations standing together, working together, because it is only through partnership that the vision of a brighter future for all, where no one is left behind, foreseen by the Sustainable Development Goals, such a future can only be realized in this manner. In this regard, the launch of the Africa Regional Center is indeed a watershed moment, which we are all privileged to share and in which we all are excited to be a part. With these brief remarks, I wish to warmly welcome all of you to this launch, and particularly welcome His Excellency our President, President Zuma, and his distinguished guest, the President of the New Development Bank, Mr. Kamath. Thank you very much. I'm glad that you are able to clap, because I know your hands are very cold. And Minister Nkwane is reminding me that the president of the New Development Bank is accompanied by his deputy presidents. Two deputy, I said presidents. Two deputy presidents. So perhaps if they could stand so that we all know them. And I understand they're the ones who take applications for loans. So please do not disrupt Mr. Kamath. We are indeed extremely excited, Mr. President, to have you here with us. And President Zuma, we congratulate you on the moment that we've arrived at, as well as you, Minister Gigaba, as a leading light in this effort. Allow me then, ladies and gentlemen, to ask you to rise while we receive the national anthem of the Republic of South Africa. Would you all rise? Thank you. Thank you very much. You may be seated. I think this launch could not have happened in a better month, in Women's Month, a most sensible choice of a date. It is my great pleasure then to invite Minister Nkwane Mashabane, the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, and Mr. Kamath, the President of the New Development Bank, to lead us in the signing ceremony. Minister and Mr. President. Thank you very much, and congratulations. It's now my great pleasure to invite the President of the New Development Bank, Mr. KV Kamath, to present his remarks. Mr. President.
Your Excellency President Zuma, Honorable Ministers, Honorable Ambassadors, Other Excellencies, distinguished guests, friends and colleagues. I'm delighted to be here in South Africa and extend to you a very warm welcome from the New Development Bank. It's an honor for us to have you all present here at the opening ceremony of the Africa Regional Center. The NDB looks forward to working closely with you as we grow our operations in South Africa and over time, the African continent. The establishment of the ARC, which is the first regional office of the NDB, is an important milestone of the bank. It marks the fulfillment of a commitment made by the founders of the bank in its Articles of Agreement. We sincerely appreciate the strong support that we have received from the ministries, various ministries in the South African government, which has allowed us to reach this milestone. I particularly would like to thank Her Excellency, the Minister for International Relations, and His Excellency, the Minister of Finance, and indeed, you, Sir, President Zuma, for all the support that we have received. The presence of President Zuma and the honorable ministers here demonstrates the importance of the ARC and the NDB to the Republic of South Africa. Thank you for your presence and support. The NDB will strive to meet the expectations you have from it. The ARC will be the face of the NDB in Africa. It will progressively undertake a growing range of the bank's work, beginning with project identification and preparation. I would like to begin by sharing some thoughts with you on the progress that NDB has made thus far. The bank started operations in July 2015. In the 2 years since then, the bank has laid a foundation in all functional areas, and we have started building on this foundation. With the support of all our members, including South Africa, we have put in place policies, procedures, and processes that guide our work. In 2016, the NDB approved 7 projects, all broadly in the area of sustainable infrastructure, totaling over US dollars 1.5 billion to all our 5 member countries. In 2017, we expect to approve loans aggregating between US dollars 2.5 to US dollars 3 billion for about 10 projects. In 2018, we expect to present about 15 to 20 projects to our board, involving a total lending of about US dollars 4 billion for the board's consideration. Our target is to end 2018 with a total loan book of about US dollars 8 billion for approximately 35 projects. In 2018, we also plan to begin our private sector operations and explore investments in public-private partnership projects. We are working closely with authorities in South Africa to identify a strong pipeline of projects that we can support. As I have mentioned earlier, from now on, we expect that our ARC will play a major role in project identification and preparation. In fact, the last 2 days, my message to the team in Shanghai and the team which will be resident here is that we have an appetite to do about $1.5 billion of lending to South Africa over the next 18 months. And the task that is before the members of the ARC is to make sure that this pipeline gets fructified into actual lending projects. So upfront, I want to say that a target has been set, and we will make sure that our team strives and drives the target. I'm taking this occasion because it's a public occasion, and I always feel stronger when, with such strong backing, the minister, from the president and the ministers, I make this commitment so that the team then can set the goal. NDB has thus far received total capital contributions of about US dollars 2.6 billion, including advance payments from some of our member countries, in this instance, China and Russia. We expect to receive another US dollar 900 million by January 2018. Timely and even advanced receipt of capital contributions from all our members is a strong vote of confidence in the institution and sends a positive signal to the global community about the commitment of our founders. I would like to thank the South African authorities for their timely capital contributions. Till date, the bank has raised about US $450 million equivalent from the Chinese financial markets through a renminbi green bond issue. We plan to raise additional funding of between US $2 to $2.5 billion between now and the end of 2018 through local currency bonds, which I'll speak of a little later, in our member countries, as well through hard currency bond issues. We believe that South African market offers attractive opportunities for fundraising, and at the appropriate time, we will work with authorities here in South Africa and explore these opportunities to raise RAND funds. In line with this fundraising objective, the bank will formally begin the process of obtaining its international credit rating in the next few months. The bank's general strategy, which lays down a framework in which the bank will operate over the next 5 years, was approved in July 2017. The strategy targets a total lending volume of about US $32 billion by 2021, including local currency financing. It's a living document and will evolve both as the bank itself evolves and as the external landscape within which the bank operates evolves. The bank has so far hired about 100 staff from its member countries through a rigorous and transparent selection process on the principles of meritocracy and gender equality. We propose to have about 150 staff on board by this year and about 220 staff by the end of 2018. One element of the NDB's mandate is to complement the work being done by existing institutions. Towards this end, the bank has entered into formal cooperation agreements with many global, regional, and national institutions. These partnerships enable the bank's learning in critical areas and promote South-South cooperation, supporting knowledge and expertise transfer among our members. These partnerships also help us achieve our objective of being a lean institution in terms of staffing. We aim to have critical core skills within the institution while leveraging the resources and knowledge of other institutions through partnerships and collaborations. We will minimize duplication of efforts. Another element of the bank's mandate is to operate largely within the geographical boundaries of its member countries. Therefore, expanding operations of the bank to countries other than its members will mean expanding the membership of the bank. In April 2017, the Board of Governors took the first step towards this objective and approved the terms, conditions, and procedures for admission of new members to the bank. Next steps in this process will be taken as per the guidance of our Board of Governors. The NDB's mandate is to finance infrastructure and sustainable development. NDB's activities have thus far been and will continue to be focused in these areas. NDB's activities are geared to strongly supporting its member commitments and objectives under the COP21 agreement and the UN's Sustainable Development Goals. The multilateral development banking industry is now more than 70 years old. In this industry, the NDB is the youngest institution established in the 21st century. This gives us the advantage of learning from past experiences, coming up with innovations, and incorporating them into our operations. Innovation will be a key area of emphasis for the NDB. One area that NDB will innovate in and focus on is lending in local currency in our member countries, something that is not happening or happening to only a limited extent currently. Having been a banker all my life, I'm a firm believer that reducing the exchange rate risk inherent in foreign currency financing can enable infrastructure projects to be financed more sustainably. More projects are likely to become sustainable and bankable if they face lesser exchange rate risk. The effective cost of such borrowings to member countries will also be significantly lower. The NDB has begun the process of local currency lending in its operations in China. Subject to local market conditions and subject to the governments of our member countries wanting to borrow in local currencies, the bank would be very happy to examine the feasibility of providing similar local currency loans to our other member countries, including South Africa. Overall, the NDB has made a strong start as a new entrant to the community of multilateral development banks. Of course, we have a lot to learn, and we are actively doing so. We believe we also have new ideas to contribute. We will continue to expand the scale and scope of our operations as we grow, and we are confident that South Africa will be a significant country of operations for the bank, especially with our on-ground footprint of the ARC and especially the opportunities that the African continent will provide as we mature and grow. I want to now turn to a little more detail about the role of the ARC. As I mentioned earlier, the ARC will be the face of the NDB in Africa. Organizationally, the ARC forms a part of the operations vice presidency of the bank, headed by Mr. Zushian, our vice president and chief operations officer. It will be headed by a person of the level of Director General, the highest level of staff in the bank. This demonstrates the importance that NDB believes that the ARC needs to deliver on its mandate. The ARC's initial emphasis will be on identification and preparation of projects in South Africa. This it will do in line with South Africa's own National Development Plan, which the government has adopted as a blueprint. The NDB and the ARC will aim to partner with the government to achieve the goals that have been set out. Of particular relevance to the NDB is the National Infrastructure Development Plan, which is a part of the National Development Plan, which sets out a series of ambitious and far-reaching initiatives envisaged to transform South Africa's economic landscape. We expect that initiatives that NDB supports will form a part of the strategic investment projects identified by the government. The ARC will work closely with the government, public and private sector agencies, and other relevant stakeholders in South Africa in identifying these projects which have a strong developmental impact. It will play a role in preparing these projects so that they can be financed subsequently. The ARC will also support the effective and efficient implementation of these projects. Over time, the ARC's activities will expand both in scale and scope. It could, in due course, play a role in sharing knowledge and development experience across countries. It would also play a role in coordinating the NDB's partnership and collaboration with institutions on the continent. As and when the Board of Governors approve expansion of NDB's operations in other countries in Africa, the ARC could also play a leading role in initiating and scaling up the NDB's work in those countries. I believe that through the ARC, we are planting a seed. As the NDB's own operations grow, so will this seed sprout and grow as the ARC takes on an increasingly larger role for its own work within NDB. Excellencies, Honorable Ministers, ladies and gentlemen, I'm delighted that you could grace this important occasion and thank you all for being here. The ARC is critical to the bank's future activities in Africa. It's an important element of the bank's strategy. On behalf of the bank staff and management, I give my assurance that we'll work hard to ensure it succeeds. I expect one byproduct of the ARC is the NDB will be better known in South Africa. One challenge we have been facing is to attract the brightest talent from South Africa. I want to say that at our young professional levels, which is where we take in the brightest youngsters, typically below 30, we have a very strong inflow of applications from South Africa. And I also want to say that that application flow is gender neutral. We have as many women as men applying for positions there. And indeed, we are filling those positions. Our challenge has been as we go higher. And that, I think, part of the challenge was our name was not well known, and I believe this occasion, sir, gives us an opportunity to present ourselves and build on the goodwill so that we can attract the best talent from South Africa as we go and build our organization. I also seek your support in making the NDB and ARC a success. I invite you to help us establish the ARC and the NDB as important contributors to the development of South Africa and as useful participants in the development agenda of the continent. Going forward, we trust that we will be able to bring in experience that will be useful to the entire African continent. In all this work, the ARC will be the face of the bank in Africa. Thank you again for your support and attention. Thank you.
Thank you very much to the President of the New Development Bank, Mr. Kamath, for his most insightful remarks, and I think a very useful overview, particularly for us in South Africa, and we hope the media will help communicate the progress that the NDB has begun to make, the very impressive indication of projects that are to receive support in the various BRICS countries. So the bank is working, the bank is underway, and we need to believe in its reality. And I think Mr. Kamath has provided a very, very useful overview of the work that is being done. I wanted to share with you, Mr. Kamath, the trouble we often experienced through our president demanding that we should have this launch. He established a committee of ministers, and most unusually, we normally, when we have such committees, we operate fairly independently. But with this particular one, we had massive interference and would be called to explain why the bank has not been, the regional center has not been opened, where is the building, when will it be operational, and come back in 7 days with an answer. We were horrified, but here we are. So, Mr. President Zuma, you've achieved your objectives. We are here, the work has been done. And of course, we were led in an absolutely sterling fashion by the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation, as well as supported by our colleague in finance, Minister Gigaba, and his team. So it's taken quite a lot of work to get to this step, and we are most hopeful that we're going to see the impact of the NDB on the development imperatives, both of South Africa and the broader African continent. It's now my great honor and privilege to invite His Excellency, the President of the Republic of South Africa, President Zuma, to deliver the keynote address. Mr. President.
Thank you very much indeed. Key and the note and the address. Yes. Honorable ministers and deputy ministers were present here. Mr. Kamath, the President of the New Development Bank, captains of industry and finance sectors who are present here, members of the diplomatic corps, particularly the ones from the member countries of BRICS. Ladies and gentlemen, good morning to all of you. We are truly delighted to share this extremely important occasion with you. The launch of the African Regional Center of the New Development Bank is a historic occasion, as it marks the strengthening of the BRICS formation and also underlines the BRICS commitment to the development of the African continent and emerging markets. This is a critical milestone not only for South Africa, but for the African continent as a whole. We are thus celebrating it as a shared achievement. The idea of establishing a new bank with a new mission and orientation was first discussed in Durban in 2013, when we had the honor of hosting the BRICS Forum. We later agreed to establish a center in Africa to take care of the important developmental needs of this continent. The launch of the Africa Regional Center is testament to our commitment that BRICS and the new development bank should benefit not only BRICS countries, but should also benefit the whole of Africa and the developing world as a whole. In fact, when this bank was launched here, when we hosted BRICS, it was for the first time we had what has become a culture of BRICS, the outreach program, wherein a number of heads of states from the continent attended one session with the leaders of BRICS and indeed raised their issues and expectations, and indeed I'm sure that convinced the BRICS leaders that establishing this center here will go a long way to help Africa's development. This is therefore truly a proud moment which points to a brighter future for the people of our continent and the developing world in general. Program Director, in the 2 years of the bank's existence, I have been most pleased at the progress that it has made. Notable achievement in this regard includes the signing of the founding agreement of the new development bank, which paved the way for the opening of the bank's head office in Shanghai, in China, the issuance of the first set of loans amounting to 1.5 billion US dollars, approximately 20 billion rands in total, to fund renewable energy projects in member countries is a significant step forward indeed. The bank's very first green bond issuance in the Chinese capital market, mobilizing about $450 million in the process, is also noteworthy. And most recently, the approval of a general strategy that will guide the bank's operations in the next 5 years demonstrates that we are on the right path. Today, we gather to celebrate yet another milestone, the launch of the African Regional Center. I wish to thank the new Development Bank President, Mr. Kamath, and his team for the excellent work over the years, which has brought us to this momentous occasion. We are confident that the bank will build on these achievements and grow from strength to strength. Next, the bank will start the process to consider new members and finalize the project pipeline for the second batch of loans to be offered in the 2017-2018 financial year. we wish the bank well in these endeavors. The biggest challenge is that Africa remains largely unindustrialized, with the result that our economies are overexposed to the whims of commodities markets. African countries generally do not have adequate infrastructure interconnections. As a result, we cannot maximize the benefits of regional trade. Worse still, the continent does not have adequate social infrastructure for the provision of basic services such as health and education, and we therefore are not able to significantly improve the living standards of our people. Indeed, due to this infrastructure gap, Africa has been unable to unlock its growth potential and bring prosperity to her people. But of course, it is not because of Africa's shortcomings. These unfortunate things were imposed to them, and they were restricted not to do anything. If anything, every activity was channeled in a particular way. And I'm making this point because people must not ask the question, where were the Africans? What were they doing? Were they sleeping? No, it wasn't. We believe time has come for Africa, and indeed, the very fact that we have such an important bank resident in this continent, that means Africa is on the move. Given these challenges, the African continent has great expectations for the new development bank, particularly because of its experience with regard to how difficult it has been to be able to get finances for Africa to do its own. We expect that the bank, through the African Regional Center, will contribute to accelerating infrastructure investment in energy, transport, water, and other productive sectors. South Africa, since its joining of BRICS in 2011, has advocated for inclusivity of the global South, especially the African continent. We are therefore happy to know that the bank is working on expanding its membership to other countries beyond BRICS. We certainly trust that African countries will be among the first to take up membership at the new development bank. Ladies and gentlemen, 70 years after the end of the Second World War, the world continues to be plagued by the endemic problems of poverty and human suffering, more so in the African continent. The recent bout of violence and military confrontation in some countries in the Middle East and Africa has notably exacerbated this problem. These tragic realities highlight the need for new and sustainable solutions. We therefore call on the new development bank and like-minded institutions to test new boundaries, explore new possibilities, and deliver sustainable solutions that will better serve humanity. I've been very happy, Mr. President, for you to make an important point that this bank will deal with countries, in some cases, on the local currencies. I think that is indeed a new outlook, a new approach that says the finances of this bank are there to help people to develop, to assist them, not to put them into more burdens by saying look for a particular currency which they don't have. This is an indication of the new approach by this new bank. I'm encouraged by the recent announcement made at the second annual meeting of the New Development Bank Board of Governors in New Delhi to increase the bank's lending to $2.5 billion in the 2017-2018 financial year. This announcement has come at an opportune time for South Africa, as we need more projects at this point in time. We have great expectations for this regional office. We would like to see an office that is geared towards fulfilling the New Development Bank's founding objectives. These are to foster the development of member countries, support economic growth, promote and facilitate job creation, and to build a knowledge-sharing platform among developing countries. The regional office will have to extend its core focus beyond project identification and preparation if it wants to truly realize these objectives. The office should, in time, be given the autonomy to extend loans to qualifying countries in the continent, whilst also serving as a node for capacity building and knowledge sharing. However, the bank is still in its infancy stage, and understandably, such an expansion would be carried out in phases. But from your own presentation, Mr. President, this morning, you seem to have the enthusiasm and passion and ideas supported by a capable team that understands the challenges of developing countries. We are very happy to be part of this new approach globally. I'm sure the world will never be the same with the coming into being of the BRICS Bank. and the BRICS group with me. Distinguished guests, it is fitting that we celebrate this launch in the same year that we celebrate the centenary of one of our founding fathers, Isithwalandwe Oliver Reginald Tambo. This giant of our liberation struggle envisaged an Africa that was at peace with itself and the world. He also envisaged one in which all its citizens enjoyed unlimited economic prosperity through cooperation and shared ideas. The launch of the New Development Bank's first regional office is a major step towards the realization of O.R. Tambo's vision for our country and indeed our continent. Indeed, this is a turning point for Africa and its development. This new bank will enable continued fruitful cooperation with our global partners, which will help us promote sustainable development through integration, industrialization, and infrastructure development on the continent. The launch takes place during the week in which we are hosting the 37th Southern African Development Community Heads of State and Government Summit in our country. The summit takes place under the theme, partnering with the private sector in developing industry and regional value chains. SADC celebrates 25 years of existence this year, and membership has grown to 15 countries. The combined population is about 300 million people. South Africa will assume the chair of SADC this week, and projects such as the New Development Bank will be supported and promoted in earnest as part of advancing Africa's development agenda. Mr. Kamath, President of this New Development Bank, ministers, distinguished guests, it is my pleasure and honor to declare the African Regional Center of the New Development Bank officially opened for business. Thank you very much.
Another round of applause to the President, please. Thank you very much to President Zuma for his keynote address. I think the President of the New Development Bank would certainly have got a sense of the hope and aspiration that lies in this launch, and the very deep belief that we have as South Africa in the role that the New Development Bank will play, both in our country, but as the President has indicated, in the African continent as well. We firmly hold to the belief that the progressive agenda to create a new progressive path in the world that has been adopted by BRICS will be fully realized through the work that you will lead in the New Development Bank. And as we heard you speak in your remarks earlier, there was quite an amazing complementarity between your remarks and those of the President, signaling again that we are absolutely correct in the hope and aspiration we hold in the work that the NDB would do. So we wish the center well, and we wish you well in your leadership, not just of the bank in Shanghai, its headquarters, but in all the places where it will exist. Thank you very much for your presence here. The Minister of Finance, Minister Gigaba, will deliver the closing remarks for our launch. He whispered to me there, because I asked him, that we are going to build a wonderful Africa Regional Center. This is just a temporary facility for the regional center. And so I want him to come and honor his promise verbally here so that I can hold him to it. Dear colleague, Minister Gigaba, would you now come and offer your closing remarks?
Your Excellency, Mr. President, President Kamath of the New Development Bank, honorable ministers and deputy ministers, colleagues who are members of the Interministerial Committee, looking nice and chilled, pun intended. Excellencies, ambassadors and high commissioners, leaders of business organizations and state-owned entities, particularly the development finance institutions, senior officials of government who are here present today, particularly to be parochial, the team from National Treasury, led by our Director General, ladies and gentlemen of the media fraternity, distinguished guests, we would like to take this opportunity to thank you all for your attendance here today on such an historic occasion as this one, which, as both the President of the Republic and the President of the Bank have outlined, spells great promise, not only for South Africa, but for the peoples of our continent. I would like to take this opportunity to also indicate that one of the promises I had made to the Minister of Science and Technology was that I would use only half an hour of my hour's address because it's cold. But I would like first and foremost to thank His Excellency the President, who has been a very difficult to please taskmaster, or perhaps to use more appropriate description, slave driver. Who ensured that we worked tirelessly to bring this day to be. Thank you, Mr. President, for your vision, for your leadership, for your guidance. I would also like to thank the President of the Bank and the Deputy Presidents who are here, Mr. Mastorp and Mr. Zhu, for your support, working hand in hand with us to ensure that we bring this day to reality. The staff and team of the bank have been meticulous in working with us, very committed, and they have demonstrated passion and zeal. And that is why we have what we are doing today. I also wish to thank the officials of government, led by the interministerial committee that is here. We've worked very hard to resolve some of the challenges that we were faced with. It was heartening to watch the host country agreement being signed. The very fact that we are here today for the launch of the Africa Regional Center. And I think the timing, not only on Women's Month, but in the midst of the SADC Summit, which serves to locate our commitment as South Africa to the Africa continent and the Southern Africa region in particular. I think it behoves that we should send our sympathies to the people of Sierra Leone on the occasion of the floods they have been experiencing. Our sympathies to the families of those who lost their lives on the occasion, and appeal to all South Africans and the peoples of the world to pray for Sierra Leone. We wish to thank all the officials who made this launch to take place, to wish the acting DG of the center well in the months ahead, as well as the staff that will be supporting him, delegated by the bank. And finally, I would like to, just to conclude my 30 minutes, I would like to thank the former chairperson of the African Union Commission who just joined us for joining us to start with, having spearheaded the formulation of the AU Agenda 2063. We hope that you will take heart, ma'am, in seeing the unfolding of these events and the fact that the Agenda 2063 of the African Union is moving forward. I think we look forward, Mr. President, to submitting a report at the BRICS Summit in Xiamen, in China, and hope that the South Africa story by then will be well complemented by, if not the final project pipeline, but great progress in that regard. Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. You can now shift towards the heaters or the sun. You all have been great guests. We appreciate you. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Minister Gigaba. I was very nervous when you said you'll speak for 30 minutes because not being a presiding officer, I didn't quite know how I would issue the point of order. So thank you very much for keeping to the agreed time. Ladies and gentlemen, we did have the ribbon cutting earlier. So although you're not seeing it now, it doesn't mean it didn't take place. It took place out there. I remember once not reading a speech that had been handed out by someone, and there was a furore that I and my official had quarreled. So I thought I should tell you the ribbon cutting has happened, in case you make up your own story. It has been done. I would like again to join Minister Gigaba in thanking you for having graced this occasion. In particular, I wish to thank President Zuma and President Kamath for being here, my colleague, Minister Nkwane Mashabane, Minister Gigaba, the other colleague ministers who serve on the IMC, and the Deputy Minister of Finance, Deputy Minister Buthelezi. And we are pleased that Madam Nkosazana Dlamini Zuma, the former chairperson of the AU Commission, the first woman in Women's Month, when we launched the Africa Regional Center, is able to be with us this morning. And of course, all the distinguished guests and ladies and gentlemen who have graced our launch. There will be a briefing by the senior executives of the bank to the media. I think some of the protocol officers will guide our colleagues in the media to the correct venue. And any other media engagements would be arranged by the protocol staff. As for the rest of us, I understand that due to the cold weather, some tea has been prepared for us. And so you're all invited to join us in refreshments. Again, our staff will guide you to the exact venue. Thank you very much for your attention, and thank you to all our distinguished speakers. If we could allow the presidents to leave, and then we will depart to the refreshment venue.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Mama.
Thank you. Thank you.
My job.
Thank you.
Got my back.
What did you get?
So we're going to take the press conference. It's going to happen inside, yeah.
We just open all the guns from the bed.
Okay.